I never thought I'd be the kind of person who hid something like this. Not from my best friend, not from my family, and certainly not from the man I share my life with. But here I am, weeks later, still walking around with this secret lodged in my chest like a stone I can't swallow. It started with something so simple, just the fact that I couldn't pay rent. But it became something much more complicated, much messier. And I don't know how to untangle it without breaking everything else in my life. It was early spring, and the cold still clung to the walls of my apartment. I'd lost some hours at work after a round of layoffs, and the bills had been stacking up like a bad game of Jenga. I was down to ramen, stale bread, and that jar of peanut butter I swore I'd throw out months ago. When the rent reminder came from Mr. Lawrence, my landlord, I just stared at it on my phone until the screen went dark. I didn't have it. Not even close. Mr. Lawrence wasn't some faceless corporate landlord. He was an older man, late 50s maybe, who owned a few properties in town. He lived 2 blocks away and often stopped by to fix little things himself instead of calling a handyman. We'd always had a polite, distant relationship. I never thought about him much outside of those moments when the faucet leaked or the smoke alarm beeped. But that month I couldn't ignore him. I avoided answering his calls for a few days, hoping I'd somehow find the money before we had to talk. But on the 4th day there was a knock at my door. Froze. My heart thudded hard enough that I felt it in my throat. I opened the door to see him standing there, holding a grocery bag in one hand. "Can we talk?" he asked gently. I let him in, feeling heat rush to my face. I mumbled something about meaning to call him, about the hours at work being cut, about how I just needed a little time. I braced for irritation, for the reminder that this was a business and he had every right to evict me. Instead, he set the grocery bag on my counter and looked at me with a softness I hadn't expected. "I'm not here to make this harder for you," he said. "I know things have been rough lately. You've been a good tenant. I want to help if you'll let me." Inside the bag was milk, bread, fruit, and a box of tea. I didn't know whether to cry or refuse it. But I thanked him, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and shame. Then he said something that would set the whole chain of events in motion. "I'm going to waive your rent this month. And if you need more time, we'll figure something out." No one had ever done something like that for me before. I was overwhelmed, and maybe a little too eager to trust the gesture. Over the next few weeks, he started stopping by more often. Sometimes it was to check on a leaky pipe. Sometimes just to bring me extra groceries he claimed he accidentally bought too much of. We'd end up talking in my kitchen for 20 minutes at a time. I told myself it was harmless. Then one night, after I'd had an argument with my boyfriend over the phone, I opened the door to find Mr. Lawrence standing there with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. I should have told him no. I should have said I was tired. But I didn't. I let him in. We didn't cross any obvious lines that night. We sat at my table, sipping wine, talking about everything from books to travel. But I noticed the way he looked at me. Lingering, almost wistful. And worse, I noticed that part of me liked it. It felt dangerous in a way that was intoxicating, especially after weeks of feeling unwanted and unappreciated in my relationship. After that night, I started keeping things from my boyfriend. I didn't tell him about the wine. I didn't mention the extra groceries. I didn't even tell him about the waived rent. I told myself it was because he'd be judgmental, or because he'd insist I move. But deep down I knew it was because I didn't want to give up the strange safety I felt in Mr. Lawrence's attention. The moral dilemma crept in slowly. Every time I accepted something from him, I wondered if I was crossing a line. Was I taking advantage of his kindness, or was he taking advantage of my vulnerability? I couldn't answer that. And then one afternoon he came by with an envelope. "This is for next month too," he said, pressing it into my hands. Inside was enough to cover my rent and a little more. I wanted to refuse it, but I didn't. My hands were shaking when I put it in my drawer. That night, lying in bed, I felt a gnawing guilt so strong it made me nauseous. The betrayal wasn't that I had done anything physical. It was that I had let someone else step into an emotional space that should have been reserved for my boyfriend. I had let him be the one I confided in, the one I felt relief seeing at my door. I was keeping secrets. And secrets have a way of growing teeth. When my boyfriend visited a week later, he noticed the fruit bowl full of fresh produce and asked how I could afford it. I lied without hesitation. That scared me more than anything else. That lying had become effortless. I know I need to end this strange, fragile arrangement before it turns into something I can't take back. But every time I think about telling Mr. Lawrence no more, I see that first night, the grocery bag in his hands, the look in his eyes when he said he just wanted to help. And part of me wonders if I'm ready to give up the only lifeline I've had in months. I tell myself I'll figure it out soon. But deep down I know the truth. The longer I wait, the harder it will be to untangle the gratitude from the guilt, and the kindness from the quiet betrayal.